Let's bring in Ashley Parker, staff writer at The Atlantic and an MS Now political analyst. Jake Sherman, co-founder of Punchbowl News and an MS Now political contributor. Joining me here in studio, Basil Smikle, former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party and an MS Now political analyst. Jake, what can you tell us about what's happening in Florida and about the Republicans' level of nervousness about the midterms?
Well, they're probably not as nervous as they should be, especially if gas prices, are through the roof, and the economy is slowing down. They've been pulled in two different directions, which is the president has said that affordability is a hoax and no one has to worry about it and everything is great. But then Republican members of the House go home and they hear and see a different thing. And we learned from the Biden era that you cannot tell people they are not feeling something they are. And if people are feeling that they are squeezed and that things cost too much money, there are political impacts to that. And on top of that, Republicans are going to, or they're trying to, we'll see if they're able to, coalesce around a plan to do another reconciliation bill. I'm skeptical, but they're going to try. And that reconciliation bill will necessarily almost include some budget cuts. Now, they call it waste, fraud, and abuse, or other programmatic savings around the government. But someone's waste, or one person's waste, is another person's program. And so that is in many cases. So that's something they have to keep in mind. And I'll just say, there are a lot of members of Congress in the House, Republican members of the House, who are a lot more focused on affordability as a concept than President Trump says he is. And we'll have to see. President Trump is going to speak to House Republicans tonight in Doral, Florida. We have a reporter on the scene. And then he's holding a press conference at 5:30 p.m. in Doral at the House Republican retreat. Both of those things are sure to produce news.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Ashley, so in this poll, he gets poor marks on the economy, poor marks on tariffs, poor marks on immigration. But does that mean some vulnerable Republicans will try to steer clear of Trump?
Well, so far, Republicans, with a few certain notable exceptions, have been incredibly reticent to break with the president. But as Jake said, Republicans are aware of what is and is not popular in their home districts and in their home states. They acutely know where their voters stand on Iran, on sort of what voters feel like was going too far on immigration, and of course, most importantly, on the economy. So, there's sort of two types of breaks. We have not seen a ton of people coming out and criticizing the president directly, but are they going to take a different message from him and talk about feeling their voters' pain, and they know what it's like, and here's what they're doing to get it back on track? That is certainly much more likely.
So, Basil, we mentioned in the last hour that President Trump responded to these growing prices for gas by saying, quote, "It's a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. Only fools would think differently." Opening for the Democrats there, pretty big one.
Well, it's an opening when he says he's not signing any bill except the SAVE Act, which impacts our elections, because they're quite nervous about the concerns of Democratic mobilization around so many of these issues. Democrats are winning on a generic ballot across the country. And when we think about the mobilization as a result of the ICE raids, that only continues, right? Even if you don't necessarily see people in the streets, there's conversation, there's organizing, there's conversation around how we raise money for specific candidates. And when you look at the Democrats' record over the last few elections, yes, some of them have been special elections, that is true, but everywhere down ballot, Democrats are winning, so people are paying attention. And that is bad news for Donald Trump and the Republicans. So I understand that they're meeting. I understand that it's important for them to kind of get everything in order and try to come out with a clear message. But I would say for Democrats, it's going to be difficult to do that when your president keeps undermining you. And that, to me, is the big opening that Democrats have.
Well, let me ask you this: is maybe one of the challenges for Democrats not follow the bouncing ball? Because when something's going bad, Donald Trump says, "Look over here," and then there's something else to talk about. Do they need to really get together? Do they need to have a cohesive strategy? Do they need to focus on whatever it is, the economy, going to war, and American lives being lost?
Sure. And it's generally, in my view, around this cost of living issue, right? Your costs are going up, gas is going up. Affordability is still a big issue. And what is the president focused on? Wars abroad. One of the things he said he would not do. So, yes, it's not just about talking about what Donald Trump has done. It's about what Democrats can do for the country. It's creating a world that they can get voters to aspire to. I think that's probably the biggest challenge for Democrats, is the cohesion around that kind of message, and then have the details filter in as needed in individual contests. But I would also say that for Democrats, it is also about finding the energy in the party. You're seeing some retirements. You're seeing a lot of folks get a lot older, but a lot of younger people running for office. It's important, and I say this all the time, it's important to make sure that they go where the energy is and try to get this new generation of leadership in positions of power.
So, Ashley, the Republican retreat we keep talking about is in Florida, a state that has the second largest population of seniors in the nation after California. We know seniors are the most dependable when it comes to voting. In 2024, nearly 75% of people 65 and older voted, compared to less than 48% of 18 to 24-year-olds. You can also say, right, older voters more likely to feel the effects of market volatility in their 401ks if you're at or near retirement, least able to afford spikes in energy prices and other things. Is there a message the president is missing to them?
Well, the message that the White House has, and again, this is not the message the president himself has necessarily been sticking to, but the message to the members of Congress who are up for re-election is essentially that the White House wants them to deliver, is that we need to finish the job we've started, that you need to give us a little more time to get prices down, inflation down, people back to work, et cetera, which is already a little bit of a tenuous message. But the real issue will be, even if people believe that and buy that this White House and this Republican crop of lawmakers deserves a little more time to get the job done, if it feels like the job is not getting done, if gas prices are spiking as they just did, including quite notably in Florida, right? If stocks are taking a drop, especially as you pointed out, 401ks, where seniors need that money sooner and they can't afford that volatility, then the answer to even the White House talking point will be no, and that will be a problem for them.
And speaking of the speaker, which the president did today, you might have seen it. He said, I will be going to Speaker Mike Johnson, who is doing a fantastic job. He puts in parentheses, fundraising event at 4 o'clock. So, Jake, I am curious what he thinks about his prospects of holding on to the speakership. I'm also curious how he's held on to his job in spite of what has been a volatile position to be Speaker of the House and what can often be the changing moods of the President of the United States.
Amazing. He's been Speaker longer than Kevin McCarthy was Speaker, much longer than Kevin McCarthy was Speaker. Yeah, it is crazy to think about. Mike Johnson has done effectively what the president wants, with very little variation, and he's been able to stay Speaker just because of that. And Johnson thinks that they are going to keep the majority. He thinks they have a great story to tell. He thinks things are only going to get better. The tax cuts, or the extension of the tax cuts that Republicans passed last year, will start to take hold in the economy and in the general zeitgeist of America. But he's oftentimes the most optimistic person in any room he walks into, and he has to be, because his job's on the line, and his speakership is on the line, and he's out there raising, hundreds of millions of dollars for House Republicans to spend in the election, and that's that. He has no other choice. So I don't put respectfully to the Speaker, I don't put much stock in what he has to say on this, because it's his job to say that they're going to keep the majority.